We've all seen them, right? In any large organization, compliance checklists are practically an art form. So much time and energy goes into engineering these perfect documents. But here's the thing. There's a fundamental illusion we've all bought into about what they actually do.
You know the ones, they're meticulously color-coded. Of course, they're version controlled down to the last decimal point.
And naturally, they've got all the right stamps of approval from legal, environmental, you name it.
So, on paper, this thing is a masterpiece, a perfect corporate process. But the second it faces a real-world test, an audit, an incident, the whole thing just collapses. So, what gives? Why does this perfect document suddenly become so fragile? Well, here's the problem. It isn't the form itself. It's that we've completely misunderstood its role. The checklist was never the system. It was only ever the interface to the system.
And this is exactly where the story breaks down. When a regulator or an internal auditor shows up, they really don't care how well designed your form is. They're there for one reason, to stress test your operational integrity. They ask questions that just slice right through the paperwork. Questions like, okay, I see you found an issue here. When was it corrected? And how do you know it was corrected? Show me the proof. Or the big one, are you seeing the same pattern at your other sites? You see, these aren't checklist questions, they are system questions. And that's exactly where programs built on paper alone begin to crumble. So let's look at the failure points. Number 1, the form might be standardized, but the execution sure isn't. Corporate can create a perfect template, but out in the field, OK in one region might mean something completely different than OK in another. The form is the same, but the interpretation and the evidence is all over the map. Failure point number 2, the handoff. An inspector notes a problem, a damaged silt fence, for example. They write it down. And then what happens? If that finding isn't automatically plugged into a task management workflow, you're just relying on emails and phone calls. Your defensibility doesn't erode during the inspection, it erodes in that gap between finding the problem and proving you fixed it. Third, it's not a lack of records. Big companies have mountains of records. What they lack is a coherent story. When your proof is scattered across shared drives, different apps, and 1,000 email attachments, you can't tell a clean story. And when an auditor is waiting, taking days to piece that narrative together, that doesn't look thorough. It looks like doubt. And finally, number 4, a static checklist is just terrible at capturing reality. Compliance happens in a dynamic world. There's weather, site conditions change, contractors turnover. A simple yes-no form is blind to all of that critical context. Without it, the records you have are pretty much meaningless. All of this points to a really crucial shift in thinking that's needed at the enterprise level. We have to understand the critical difference between mere documentation and true defensibility. And the difference is huge. Documentation just proves that someone wrote something down. That's it. A record was made. Defensibility, on the other hand, proves that you actually controlled a process from beginning to end. One is a record, the other is a verifiable result. So what does a defensible program actually look like? Well, it's where evidence, like a photo, is tied directly to an inspection item. It's where a finding automatically triggers a corrective action with a clear owner and a due date. Closure requires proof. And everything, all of it, is centralized and instantly searchable. The focus shifts from the form to the entire workflow. So how do you get there? The strategic shift mature organizations are making isn't about building more complicated forms. It's a move away from forms as static artifacts and toward an integrated operational flow. And here's what that integrated flow looks like. The inspection captures structured data. Any deficiency automatically creates a tracked task. That task can't be closed without verification and evidence. And all of this clean, structured data flows up into reports that give leadership real-time visibility into risk patterns. And that's the real strategic advantage here. The goal is no longer about just surviving the next audit. It's about eliminating surprises. When your compliance data is structured, evidence-backed, and tied to an accountable workflow, you move from a reactive, defensive posture to a proactive one. And in this model, the checklist actually becomes powerful again. It's no longer just a fragile piece of paper you pull out when something goes wrong. It becomes a source of operational intelligence, a real management tool that helps you see trends, identify systemic issues, and run a better business. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. If you were called to defend your program tomorrow, could you actually do it? Could you pull together a clear, coherent, and evidence-backed story in minutes, not days? Because at the enterprise scale, compliance was never about checking boxes. It's about proving control.